Hi, Terry here, and welcome to Times Gone Tech. So, as the title and thumbnail of this video implies, today I'm going to start showing you in three parts how I make TO24 primer for my use in black powder percussion caps. And we're going to start today with the sensitizer, Tetrazene. But first, you might have noticed, well, actually, you can't see it from this camera angle, but I've got one of my revolvers broken down and laid out here on the table, and you might be wondering why. Well, before I get into that, oh, and I also want to mention that, yeah, I've got a script here that I've printed up, which I always do, but I rarely ever follow it. But I've got a lot to cover today, so if you see me looking down, and that's what I'm doing, I'm making sure I don't forget something. In fact, this is the third time I've actually recorded this introduction because I forgot something. So, ever since I mentioned or announced anyway, uh, my development of the TO24 primer for black powder percussion caps, I have gotten a lot of positive feedback, and I thank each and every one of you. I sincerely mean that. I have gotten some negative feedback as well, which is okay. I don't expect everyone to always agree with me, and disagreement can often lead to some very interesting conversations. Most of those comments alluding to the fact that both Primol and TO24 use potassium perchlorate. And when potassium perchlorate burns, it leaves behind a residue of potassium chloride, which is a very common salt substitute popular among people with high blood pressure. And chlorides, of course, are very corrosive to steel. Um, couple of these comments, though, have even gone so far as to say, not this exact wording, but something to the effect of, well, if you're going to use this primer, the only advice I can give is get used to seeing rust on your guns. Well, for the past 2 months, I have fired a lot of percussion caps using both Primol and TO24, both of which do include potassium perchlorate. Now, most of the primer of the Primol primer that I've tested, I shot through my 5-inch sheriff's model, and it still has a lot of that annoying persistent orange stain from the antimony on it, which can be mistaken for rust, but it's not. And most of the um, TO24, I actually shot through my little 3-inch belly gun here. And I've fired hundreds of caps in the last couple of weeks just through this gun, testing out the TO24. In fact, I've probably fired more caps in the past 3 weeks than I normally shoot in 6 months. So I thought I would take it apart, lay it out here on the table, and give you all a good close-up look of just how corrosive potassium chloride and chlorides in general can be when used in a firearm. My goodness, look at all that rust. It is on everything. It's amazing that gun could even shoot. Yeah, I know, I'm being a little sarcastic. It's just the mood I'm in today. So, where's all the rust? Well, it's called cleaning. And I don't mean spray some cleaning foam in it, let it sit for a few minutes, then clean that out with another can of spray solvent, which also lubricates when it dries, and call it done. Black powder is by itself corrosive, and black powder firearms must be cleaned every time they're used. Now, I normally clean mine after I'm finished shooting for the day on the same day that I shoot them. I have gone until the next day and occasionally even the day after that, and I'm not proud of it, but I have set them up on the shelf, including this little belly gun that I just showed you, and for a week. And it did start to rust a little bit when I broke it down, but it cleaned up nicely and, no problem, back in service. And those of us who shoot black powder anyway, but especially those of us who use primers containing chlorates or perchlorates, we all have a time-tested, proven, no-fail method for dealing with the corrosiveness of these products. And it's called hot water, soap, and a scrub brush. Now, I personally prefer Dawn dishwashing liquid. I do not recommend any kind of cleaning agent made for black powder firearms. They may not remove all the residue and they may not remove potassium chloride, but hot water and soap does. My personal feeling is people who are having problems with corrosion by using primers containing chlorates and perchlorates is usually because they either don't know how to break a gun down and clean it properly, or they just can't be bothered with doing it every time they shoot. For some people, regular cleaning means every New Year's Eve. I can break a gun down, clean it, oil it, and reassemble it in about 20 minutes. That's if I don't drop half the screws in the carpet. But come on, 20 minutes, all right? If you can't even take 20 minutes to break your gun down and clean it after you shoot it, why don't you just don't bother even shooting it? And this reminds me of something that Paul Harrell has brought up several times on his channel in a couple of his videos, and that is the dangers of taking advice from experts who don't really know what they're talking about. So, if you're one of those experts, my advice is stop giving the rest of us advice. We know what we're doing, and we're doing perfectly fine without your guidance. However, on the subject of perchlorates and chlorides, I am currently testing out a new formula for TO24. This is an almost perchlorate free, not completely. I have been able to completely eliminate the potassium perchlorate, which accounts for over half of the chlorides generated. But INAP, isopropyl nickel amino guanidine perchlorate, is itself a perchlorate. So there's still going to be some chlorides produced. Now, it's really unknown at this point in time what kind and how much. It might be nickel chloride, it might be ammonium chloride, it might be a lot, it might be almost none. This stuff is so new, we don't really know. So just time and a lot of testing will let us know. And that's really one of the things that's kind of exciting about nickel aminoguanidine perchlorate is that in the world of primary explosives, this stuff is brand new, cutting edge tech. There's just not a lot known about it yet. Now, that by itself tends to scare some people away from it, but not me. Oh, and I will share this formula with you that I'm testing in Part C when I actually start producing some TO24 with the subcomponents that we're going to be making in Parts A and B. So I've got two formulas, the one that I'm going to call classic or regular, and then this new one, which does not contain potassium perchlorate. So more of that is coming up in Part C. And now that I've got my belly gun reassembled, it's time to move on. Oh darn, I just dry snapped the hammer on an empty nipple. And I'm not wearing safety glasses. The next point I want to bring up is where to get the chemicals and equipment needed to make this stuff. I've had several requests, more than several actually, about where to get chemicals, links to supplier sites, and people have asked, well, where can one even buy sodium nitrite? Well, let me explain my answer before I give it with a true story. Last year, a young woman in Tennessee decided that she was going to get a pilot's license, buy an airplane, and fly around the country, and she was going to film all of this and put it on social media. So she went to school, she got her pilot's license, and she got certification, and she started out on a series of solo flights, logging more and more progressively longer solo flight hours. Now, I'm not really sure if that was a requirement or if she was doing it on her own, but she started out with a series of short flights, and then she started doing progressively longer flights, recording them and putting them on social media. She was accompanied in all of her flights by her father, who was her only passenger. Well, tragically, on one of those flights, the plane crashed and they were both killed. Now, of course, the FAA stepped in and did a big investigation. But then, right after that, on YouTube, a lot of uh, professional aviators, professional flight instructors, aviation safety experts, they all got a hold of these videos that she had been posting on social media and started looking them over and giving their thoughts on why and how this crash happened. And what I gathered from watching all of these, plus seeing some clips from her videos, plus I watched a couple of her videos myself before they were pulled by the FAA. And what I gathered from all this is she was just a terrible pilot. I mean, not just inexperienced, although she was, but she was just a bad pilot. You know, not everybody is suited to fly an airplane, just like not everybody is suited to play professional basketball. A pilot has to be aware of things. They have to have a higher situational awareness than most people have driving a car. You know, things that people driving a car never even have to think about, like wind speed, wind direction, compass heading, fuel mixture, propeller trim, aileron setting. Their surroundings. You don't just stop an airplane. Like I can just stop my car. If somebody pulls out in front of me, I can stop my car. Plane flies out in front of you, you ain't stopping that plane. So you got to be aware of things that you're just not aware of driving a car or anywhere on the ground. And a pilot has to be able to think three-dimensionally. And this woman clearly could not do that. I mean, if you can't even program the autopilot on your own plane, maybe you shouldn't be trying to fly the plane with the autopilot. And after takeoff is not the time to find out you can't program it and you don't even know how to use a compass. Plus, the plane that she bought was way beyond her abilities at that point in time. I mean, I saw a photograph of it, and I have no doubt that plane cost more than my house. It's a lot like buying a Formula One racer as your very first car. It's just not a smart thing to do. During her training and certification process, somebody should have noticed this and somebody should have stepped up and just stopped it and said, "Look, I'm sorry, but you're just not suited to be a pilot." Now, maybe you can find something else to do, but flying a plane just isn't one of them. But they didn't. Now, you'd have to ask them why. But I personally think it was that everybody wanted to see her succeed. Everybody wanted to help her get that license, get up in the air, start enjoying the exciting world of aviation, get those videos on social media. And their eagerness to help her got her and her father killed. Well, working with, and handling explosives is a lot like flying an airplane. You don't get very many second chances with either one. And finding yourself in the middle of a runaway reaction that wasn't supposed to happen, but it is because you did something wrong, is not the time to realize you're not prepared for it and you don't know what to do about it. A couple of weeks ago, I went on the internet and I found within about 5 minutes and purchased this 90-gram, 2-pound tub of sodium nitrite, 99% pure technical grade, not mixed with anything else, for about 20 bucks. A couple of days ago, I went back on the internet, did another search that I know did not last any more than 10 minutes, and I found 3 additional sources that will sell sodium nitrite, technical grade, 99% pure to private citizens, at least here in the US. So if you have to ask me where to buy sodium nitrite, maybe you're just not ready to be using it to make anything with, especially an explosive. Now, I know that's going to hurt some people's feelings. It's going to make them mad. They're going to unsubscribe. They're going to leave. But I'm sorry, that's just how it is. I'll show you how I do this stuff, how I make tetrazene, how I put it all together to make TO24 primer. But getting the stuff to do it is your responsibility. If you're determined to blow half your face off, but you need my help getting the stuff to do it with, I'm sorry, but the answer is no, because you probably will blow half your face off trying. So use as a litmus test, can you find the stuff you need to make it on your own like I did? And on that note, got a little disclaimer coming up before we get into actually making some of this stuff. Warning, this video contains information regarding the manufacture and use of primary explosives. Primary explosives are extremely dangerous, or can be. All of the activities you see in every scene in this video is conducted by a trained professional. Under no circumstances whatsoever should you attempt to recreate anything you see in this video. And if you do, remember, you and only you are solely responsible for any and all consequences that occur. So if you blow a finger off or half your face, don't be mad at me because I'm not responsible for your bad decisions. Okay, making Tetrazene, the sensitizer for TO24 percussion cap priming compound. Now I have two formulas. And the first is based on using 1 gram of aminoguanidine bicarbonate. And that's so I can scale it up or down easier so that I make only enough tetrazene to be used up in the number of percussion caps that I'm going to make. This is another bit of advice I have is I only make what I need when I make it, and I use all that I make when I make it. In real time, I have no tetrazene, I have no INAP, I have no TO24 in my possession. It's all locked up in percussion caps. Hey, okay, the formula. Actually, this is embarrassing, but I'd finished this video, uploaded it, and I was working on making INAP and was taking a break for lunch and going through some of my comments. And there was somebody pointed out that I flipped the amounts of the aminoguanidine bicarbonate and the sodium nitrite when I gave the formula. It's just been one of those days, right? So anyway, the correct formula. For every 1 gram of aminoguanidine bicarbonate, you're going to want 0.77 grams sodium nitrite, 13.77 milliliters of vinegar, and 21.74 milliliters distilled water. Now, these amounts, of course, are all rounded. It's not that picky. If you're off by, a milligram or two, the thing's not going to blow up in your face. It's not that specific. It's just that the more accurate you are, the less good material left over. Aminoguanidine bicarbonate, for example, and that stuff ain't cheap, the less good stuff you're going to be pouring down the drain when you're finished. Okay, there are several methods. Actually, there's a lot of different ways for making tetrazene, but there's two different methods that I typically use. Actually, I've only used one. I'm going to be using the other one today. One is to mix everything together at room temperature, and the other is to use what's called the heated method, where we're going to heat the water and vinegar, and then we're going to dissolve the chemicals in them. And that's what I'm going to use today because it's supposed to help everything dissolve a little faster, and it's supposed to actually increase your yield a little bit. With the room temperature method, your yield might be around 40%, maybe 50%. And with the heated method, it's supposed to be up around 60%. So we're going to find out. So I've got my chemicals pre-weighed. This is aminoguanidine bicarbonate, sodium nitrite. Here's my vinegar. Here's my distilled water. So, and my thermometer. So I'm going to mix the vinegar and distilled water. And I'm going to put this on the stove, and I'm going to heat it up to no more than 40 degrees Celsius. Now, 40 degrees Celsius is 104 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm just going to go up to right around 100, 95 to 100. Okay, I'm showing right at 90 degrees, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and allowing for the inconsistencies or inaccuracies of that thermometer. That's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to transfer this to this clear glass container, which you don't need to use, but I'm going to so you can see what's going on. And now I'm going to add in my pre-measured aminoguanidine bicarbonate. And start stirring. And it is a bicarbonate. That's why you're getting that foam. It's like sodium bicarbonate in a lot of ways, baking soda. And this is where, if you have a magnetic stirrer on a hot plate, I strongly encourage you to use it. I don't use one, but probably should. But anyway, this is now where I start stirring to dissolve everything. As it dissolves, the aminoguanidine, you'll notice that it takes on, oh, I don't want to say a pale yellow color, but kind of sort of yellowish. And you want to make sure it is completely transparent, completely clear. You don't want any little speckles floating around in it. So we just keep stirring. Okay, now all of the aminoguanidine has dissolved. We're going to add our sodium nitrite. And some more stirring. And you can see a bit of a reaction immediately. See it kind of change color there? It's kind of milky and a little more yellowish. Check our temperature. Because you don't want the temperature at this point to be any higher than 30. See, it cools down while you're making it. Like right now, we're at 80. 30 degrees Celsius is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, so we're good. And it's dissolved immediately again, and it's transparent, and it's more of a pale yellowish color. Show it to you. Yeah, kind of a pale yellowish color, completely transparent. I'm going to stir it a little bit more, and then we just put it up and we wait. As I've said before, this is, as far as chemistry goes, this is kind of a boring reaction, kind of a boring process. It just takes time and slowly precipitates out. Okay, I'm going to call that done. Now I'm going to set this up in a safe place where the cats and the dogs won't get to it, and I'll check on it in an hour or two and see what's going on. Okay, I'm back here, and it's only been a few minutes, not even half an hour yet, but I wanted to show you something. If you can see, can you see that bubbling in there? See that? Little teeny tiny bubbles rising. There's some larger ones, and then there's a lot of little small ones. That did not happen with the room temperature method, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, is you do everything I just did, except with everything at room temperature. This is not an exothermic reaction. It doesn't feel like it's generating any heat. It's only about 80, 85 degrees like it was. But you can tell there's definitely some reaction going on there. It has started. There's nothing settling out yet, but the aminoguanidine and the sodium nitrite and the vinegar are reacting. And as bland and boring as that is, that's quite vigorous compared to the room temperature method. So let's give it a little more time and look at it again. So here we are 12 hours later. And as you can see, we've got, you can see it. Can you see that settling out? I don't know if you can see that in this camera or not, but they're right along the bottom there. It's starting to settle out. I'm going to filter this off with a coffee filter so you can get a better view of it. But that's after 12 hours. That's all there is to it. All right, and here it is after filtering. I'm going to let that sit for another 12 hours, see if there's any more precipitate out. And here it is. I'm filtering it now. And you see it's kind of a pale whitish yellow. And I've given it a wash with a mild 5% by weight mild solution of baking soda to neutralize the vinegar. Once that filters through, I'm going to give it a couple of washes of plain water to wash the baking soda out. and then it'll be ready to put up to dry. And here it is, laid out on a coffee filter on a wooden block to absorb water. And the yield was pretty good, actually. It turned out pretty decent. So I'm just going to let this dry out, scrape it off, powder it up. That is Tetrazene. And that is all there is to it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The thing to remember is that it's perfectly safe to handle while it's wet, and it's not really dangerous to handle when it's dry either. It is slightly more sensitive to impact and friction than mercury fulminate, but mercury fulminate sensitivity has been pretty much grossly exaggerated by Hollywood. It's not that sensitive. I mean, it was used in percussion caps and primers for almost 100 years. If it was that sensitive, it wouldn't have lasted that long. A few facts about tetrazene before proceeding to making some INAP is its detonation velocity is 4,000 meters per second. It weighs 0.45 grams per cubic centimeter. And indirect heat, it detonates with contact with direct flame. It burns very rapidly, producing large amounts of black smoke. It is destroyed in boiling water. So if you ever need to get rid of some and you don't want to burn it, just throw it in some boiling water. And it's subject to what's called dead pressing. And what that means is if it's, say, put in a mold and then pressed in a hydraulic press, for example, it loses sensitivity to the point that it can become completely inactive. Interesting to know. So that's it, making tetrazene for use in TO24 priming compound. Coming up in part B, INAP, isopropyl nickel immunoguanidine perchlorate, the main initiating charge. So stick around and thanks for watching.